For years, honestly, I genuinely carried around this quiet, constant feeling that I was somehow behind everyone else in my actual life, without ever really questioning where that specific feeling was even coming from originally. Friends were buying homes. Former classmates were getting promoted into genuinely impressive positions at their companies. People my exact same age seemed to already have their entire lives figured out completely, while I still felt like I was quietly starting over, again and again, in one area or another of my own life. It didn't matter how much I actually accomplished in any given month either, strangely enough. There was always this quiet, background hum reminding me that somehow, somewhere, I was still falling behind some invisible schedule I never actually agreed to in the first place. So I actually changed 5 specific things, deliberately, one at a time, over the course of about a year, and that heavy feeling genuinely started lifting for good, piece by piece. The first thing I actually did was stop comparing my own timeline directly to everyone else's timeline, on purpose, every single day, without exception. I used to scroll through updates constantly, quietly measuring my own real progress against whatever specific highlight someone else happened to be sharing that particular day. A wedding. A new job title. A vacation somewhere exciting and far away. Each one landed like a small, quiet verdict against my own actual life, even though I never consciously decided to actually compare myself that way at all. What I eventually realized, honestly, is that I was comparing my own full, messy, complicated reality directly against someone else's carefully edited highlight reel, which was never actually a fair comparison to begin with, not even close. Once I actually started noticing that specific pattern clearly, I began deliberately looking away from other people's timelines completely, and focusing directly on my own instead, one honest day at a time. That single shift alone, small as it sounds, quietly gave me back a genuine sense of ownership over my own real story again, instead of constantly borrowing someone else's version of what a good life was actually supposed to look like on the outside. The second thing I actually changed was letting go completely of this idea that there's genuinely one correct, official schedule everyone's actually supposed to follow in life, in a specific order, by a specific age, without exception. Graduate by this age. Get married by this particular year. Buy a home by this exact point in your career. I'd absorbed this entire invisible timeline somewhere along the way, honestly, without ever actually questioning who wrote it, or why it was ever supposed to genuinely apply to me personally in the first place, or to anyone else for that matter. The truth I eventually learned, through real experience and a lot of quiet reflection, is that this specific timeline was never actually real to begin with, in any meaningful sense. It's simply an average, a rough cultural pattern, not an actual deadline anyone genuinely has to meet on pain of failure. Some people find real direction at 20. Others genuinely find it at 40, or even later than that, and both paths are honestly completely valid in every real sense that matters, regardless of what the invisible schedule seemed to suggest. Once I actually stopped measuring myself against a fictional, invisible schedule that never truly existed for me personally, so much of that specific pressure simply evaporated almost immediately, in a way that genuinely surprised me. I wasn't actually behind at all, genuinely. I was just moving through my own particular life at my own particular pace, which was honestly the only pace that ever actually made real sense for my own specific circumstances and priorities. The third thing I actually did was start measuring genuine progress against my own actual past self, instead of endlessly measuring it against other people entirely, all the time. Every single week, I began asking myself one simple, honest question directly, without letting myself avoid it. Am I actually further along than I genuinely was 6 months ago, in any real, meaningful way that matters to me personally right now? Not further along than my friend, or my former classmate, or some stranger online I'd never actually met. further along than my own actual self, specifically, at some earlier point in my own real story. This particular shift changed absolutely everything for me, honestly, because it gave me a genuinely fair, honest measuring stick for the very first time in years of comparing myself to everyone else instead. I could actually see real, tangible growth I'd been completely missing before, simply because I was always looking outward at everyone else instead of actually looking backward at my own real journey and what it had genuinely required. I'd learned an entirely new skill from scratch. I'd become considerably more patient in relationships that used to frustrate me easily. I'd built one small habit consistently that I genuinely couldn't maintain reliably a year earlier, no matter how hard I tried at the time. None of these things would have shown up at all on someone else's specific timeline, comparing me directly to them and their own unique circumstances. But on my own actual timeline, comparing me honestly to myself, the real progress was genuinely undeniable and clearly visible, once I actually stopped to look for it properly. The fourth thing I actually changed was deliberately reducing how much time I actually spent consuming other people's carefully curated highlight reels every single day, on purpose, without exception or excuse. I didn't actually delete every single app completely, to be honest about it, because that felt genuinely unrealistic for my own actual lifestyle. But I genuinely limited my time significantly, and I started noticing directly which specific accounts consistently made me feel considerably worse afterward, every single time I scrolled through them without much real thought. Most of what I was actually consuming wasn't real, complete honesty about anyone's genuine life at all, if I'm being completely truthful about it with myself. It was the best 5% of someone's actual life, carefully selected and presented, compared unfairly against the full 100% of my own real, complicated, ordinary life happening simultaneously in the background. Once I actually reduced that specific input consciously, the quiet, constant feeling of being behind started fading considerably, almost immediately, within just a few genuine weeks of consistent practice and honest effort. I wasn't actually seeing fewer wonderful things happening to other people around me necessarily, to be clear about that. I was simply seeing considerably less of the specific, distorted comparison that used to quietly happen automatically in my own head, every single time I opened my phone without even really thinking about it consciously. The fifth and final thing I actually changed was learning to genuinely celebrate small, real progress along the way, instead of quietly waiting for one enormous milestone to finally arrive before actually allowing myself to feel genuinely caught up in life at all. I used to think real relief would only actually come once I hit some specific, significant marker somewhere down the road. The big promotion. The perfect relationship. The fully finished, completely settled life I kept imagining somewhere off in the distant future, always just a little further ahead. But that specific marker kept quietly moving further away every single time I actually got close to it, honestly, because there was always another bigger one waiting patiently right behind it, disguised as the actual real finish line. So I actually started celebrating considerably smaller things instead, deliberately, on purpose, every single week, without waiting for permission from anyone else. A hard conversation I finally had, after avoiding it for months. A single week of consistent, honest effort towards something that genuinely mattered to me personally. A moment where I actually felt proud of myself, however small it technically was in the bigger picture of things. These 5 specific changes, honestly, taken together, didn't actually make my life magically perfect overnight, and that was genuinely never really the actual point of any of this in the first place. They simply helped me finally stop running an impossible race against a finish line that was truthfully never real to begin with, no matter how convincing it felt at the time. I'm honestly not behind anymore. I'm just exactly where I actually am, moving forward at my own genuine pace, and that's finally, truly enough.